I knew it was Australia because he said what the fuck land. Hi guys, this was heavily recommended by you guys after I watched that more parse video that featured leopard seals. So here I am trying to find out more about them. Let's go!
Plenty of people are terrified of the ocean, and arguably no other animal embodies thalassophobia more than the predator time seemingly left behind. Most people will never see one alive, yet they remain one of the most nightmarish and uncanny, but also complicated and least understood apex predators on the planet.
I think it's the teeth that throw a lot of people off. Because other than that, it doesn't look that scary.
In fact, the first time you ever heard of a leopard seal, it was probably giving Happy Feet hell. Or the pebble and the penguin, in which case, make sure those doctor appointments are booked. You're getting up there. Or
really? What is this? I only heard about it in the more parse video.
maybe it was.
Oh my gosh.
If you or a loved one was a victim of that jump scare, you may be entitled to financial compensation.
Bruh.
For me though, the penguin paralysis demon is incredibly feared for an animal we don't know that much about. Hey, what's a sea leopard's favorite fast food? Popeyes. But there's a whole nother side to the assault sausage, one that just might bring you to tears if you watch long enough. This video isn't to make you fear or hold hate, but understand and even appreciate the alpha seal, not for just what it is, but how and why, and all I ask is that y'all hear me out.
I will say, again, with the mouth closed, it doesn't look half as scary.
But there is no why as to why people find leopard seals optically disturbing. Few other animals pass the eye test for being that terrifying. The leopard seal looks like a mammalian mosasaur, a prehistoric predator with a permasmirk.
Yeah, it's kind of giving water dino vibes actually, now that I think about it.
And if you think I'm exaggerating, you haven't seen or better yet heard what happens when one hauls out near humans. It's crazy, right? You can hear it in your chest. Another thing is, people often suffer from a lack of scale with sea animals. They don't know how huge tuna are, how big dolphins get.
I didn't know how big tuna are, what the fuck?
And that leopard seals can grow to 12 feet long and weigh over 1,200 pounds. Trust me, there's a worse picture than this down the line. Chances are, you've never looked a leopard seal in the mouth, because then you'd have to be surgically removed from your therapist's couch. Those teeth are built like that for a reason we'll get into soon, but this internal mugshot may be coming to a beach near you. Abolish any idea that an air-breathing barracuda is confined to Antarctica, as they've been found as far as Antarctica, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina, the What the Falklands, and more. There's at least one leopard seal aware of platypus, and that's insane to me. So is the idea that this apex pinniped could be pulling up to a pier by you.
I knew it was Australia because he said what the fuck land.
That would raise the hairs on Caillou. And even with many roles as the op to a penguin protagonist, people have spoken on the horror of sea leopards for centuries. Going back to the early 1900s, explorer Ernest Shackleton wrote about an Antarctica expedition where at one point, one of his men was chased across the ice by an aggressive, believed to be 12-foot leopard seal. The man thought he was in the clear when the massive seal dove back into the water. But then the sea leopard tracked him by following his shadow under the ice and ambushing and nearly snatching him at the next gap in the ice. And Thomas Ordley's likely would have been a statistic if one of the crew hadn't shot the seal before it could reach him. In 1985, explorer Gareth Wood was walking across a thin ice layer when a Jurassic jump scare broke out of the ice, clamping its jaws on his leg and nearly dragging him into the water. He was only saved by his mates kicking at the seal's head with boot crampons. And that's what separates sea leopards from a lot of other predators. The vast majority of sharks will ignore you, but whether out of curiosity or something else, leopard seals will boldly swim right into your space. It's the closest you can get to an encounter with a murder mermaid. It was right there. Most times they genuinely seem curious and like they're investigating your presence.
And then they open their mouth and eat your face! I heard there's only actually one person who died from a leopard seal.
But other times, they do the kind of things that led to researchers equipping inflatable boats with protective guards because of how often a 12-foot vibe check would bite through it. You only get away with that as an apex predator, and present tense plesiosaur is absolutely apex. They will eat anything. Those freakish teeth are actually for catching krill, and having trident-shaped teeth helps filter them out of the water. Krill that could be nearly 50% of their diet. Of course, the leopard seals list has much more on it, including often other seals like fur seals, and even their closest cousin, the crab eater. Obviously, they'll eat fish, and in New Zealand that can include sharks. Leopard seals also grieve squid, one was caught with a sea snake, and there's even one case of a leopard seal attempting to take out a minke whale. Even the ocean's top predator, the orca, rarely resorts to hunting an aquatic velociraptor, because this is not the average seal. But if you know this seal, you know the most famous victims of leopard seals are penguins, even though penguins aren't even the biggest part of their diet.
I actually did not know that until just now, but I did see that clip earlier where it was eating a penguin. So I was like, oh, yeah, penguins are definitely on the list.
Leopard seals are a lot more calculated than most think, and will camp themselves right at the ice's edge where they know is the penguin's entry point, which pretty much makes them a mammalian crocodile. With penguins, they'll either ambush them from below, or with a top speed of 25 miles per hour, they'll get into a police chase with an unlucky penguin. The leopard seal abuses this matchup so bad that not only will they surplus skill and murk more penguins than they eat, they'll eventually make a game out of it. Leopard seals have been seen chasing down penguins into exhaustion and seemingly toying with the bird. They'll traumatize the penguin within an inch of its life and then just shove off, like it was a sick joke. But it's when leopard seals aren't playing that things get R-rated, and it all goes back to those teeth. Those teeth could maul the grizzlies and gives them a demon's headshot. But
I'm sorry, that headshot. Okay, this headshot's actually scary. The other one just kind of looked derpy.
they lack the shearing teeth carnivores need to slice prey, and that's why you see them body birds by slamming and suplexing them against the water. A leopard seal will thrash a penguin until it genuinely gets degloved, and the penguin's skin and flayed every possible way gets eaten. So with all that, Stevie Wonder could see how the king seal of the South got its bad rep, but wild sea leopards do have one thing that not even killer whales do, and that's a human body. There's only one case in recorded human history of a leopard seal killing a person, but it's also one of the most brutal animal attack stories I've ever shared on this channel, so for obvious reasons, viewer discretion is advised.
Okay.
Kirsty Brown was a 28-year-old marine biologist for the British Antarctic Survey, and on July 22, 2003, she and a buddy were snorkeling near Rothera Research Station. They were studying the impact of iceberg scouring on the environment when the leopard seal studying Kirsty violently made an impact on her. At this point, nobody had ever lost their life to a sea leopard, but there were documented instances of aggression, and as a rule, nobody was allowed in the water if a leopard seal was spotted. The problem was, no one saw this leopard seal until Kirsty screamed and disappeared, only to resurface with her head in the seal's jaws. From there, a normally sized seal would drag her deep underwater, release her long enough to just almost resurface, just to grab and drown her again, all while mauling her with bone-crushing bites. Eventually, Kirsty and the seal disappeared, and the last time her dive buddy saw her alive, she was 20 feet underwater, desperately fighting to break free, while the apex seal held her by a fin.
Oh my gosh, that does sound fucking traumatic, dude. Imagine you're just that close to reach to the surface and be able to breathe again, and then the freaking seal drags you back.
Eventually, the seal resurfaced, over a half-mile from where they were last seen, and after bashing the predator in the head with a shovel, the rescue crew fended the seal off and finally pulled Kirsty into the boat. Tragically, as you can tell, despite several CPR attempts, Kirsty Brown would be pronounced dead right there. Kirsty's body was recovered with over 40 bite wounds, and her dive computer revealed something arguably worse. During the 10 minutes of hell, the leopard seal had dragged Kirsty to a maximum depth of 70 meters. That's 230 feet. But personally, the most disturbing part was Kirsty was already an exceptionally small human at 5'1", 120 pounds, and eyewitnesses said this was an exceptionally massive seal, estimated to have been 4.5 meters, that's nearly 15 feet long, and well over 1,300 pounds, which I genuinely don't want to believe, even if it was based off the seal's size relative to the boat. Because not only would that mean a 5-foot woman was mauled by one of the largest leopard seals ever seen, but this is what that size disparity would have looked.
That is honestly way more than I imagined too. That story actually makes me really sad. Just like imagining the stress you feel in that moment and knowing there's nothing you can really do. And like the diving buddy, imagine you're just going out diving and then this happens. Oh my gosh, so traumatic on so many levels for several people.
Like, there's no f***ing way. And since no one ever asked the leopard seal why, the most popular theory is that her size, black dry suit, and fins caused the colossal carnivore to clock Kirsty as a penguin or a fur seal. And in all her struggling, flailing, and failing to get away, all Kirsty managed was to act like prey. Which sounds wild victim blaming, and I swear I'm not. There's a reason there's no jokes in this section. This was genuinely one of the worst animal-related deaths I've read about. Imagine being mauled by a bear, but also while being waterboarded. In fact, let's get even more descriptive. Kirsty Brown spent the last 10 minutes of her life fighting an animal nearly triple her length and 10 times her weight, while being severely mauled to the head and being brought tortuously close to the surface, before being pulled again over 200 feet into a freezing abyss. Not only could the violent pressure changes cause a burst eardrum or even an embolism, her compromised wetsuit would have introduced Antarctic ice-chilled water directly to her skin.
Oh my gosh.
In the most respectful way, I really hope she blacked out or went into shock, because that is a nightmare Final Destination couldn't dream of.
Yeah.
Kirsty Brown would have an island posthumously named after her, and her death led to more safety measures and protocols being implemented.
Well, I am grateful that at least her death led to some positive changes to prevent other accidents like this from happening. And I mean, I also don't really blame the seal, because at the end of the day, it's a wild animal. Wild animals are gonna do wild animal things. Just an unfortunate freak accident. If really nobody saw the seal, like, what could they have done, right?
But there was another consequence of a horrific demise. The much more strict regulations now meant many of the biologists trying to learn more about the seals were now forbidden from entering the water to study them. Something many, like dive guide Kelvin Murray, would call an overreaction. Suddenly, an animal we barely knew much about was now basically impossible to learn more about. It was a lot like the stingray. Stingrays are rarely aggressive, and less than 5 people in human history have lost their life to one in Australia. But because one of them was Steve Irwin, you had an entire generation ready to punch out an aquatic placemat. Even though the circumstances of his death were insanely bad luck, and Khaki Jesus would have passed twice if he saw the stingray hate. Only one person has ever died to a sea leopard. It's just that the attack was so brutal that, in the pro-penguin media, meant a blubber assault weapon got demonized to hell. To be fair, with the things I said they'll do to penguins, other seals, and even humans, how could you not call this Ice Cube mammalian missile crisis a sea demon? I wouldn't blame you for being afraid, but at least give the other side of the leopard seal a chance. I was not lying when I said a pool full of sharks will ignore you, but a leopard seal will get right up in your face and conduct an investigation in your personal space. Kirsty might have been a tragic exception, because aggressive or predatory encounters with humans normally happened at the ice's edge, aka the leopard seal's favorite ambush spot. But almost every time a leopard seal has approached a human already in the water, they're doing it from a place of curiosity. That is really weird for a predator. Like, for all their bad PR, bears usually avoid people. And an experiment found that even the top predators in Africa hightail it whenever they hear human. But a giga seal will study us the same way we do them. That's weird.
Hi guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you!
One seal made it even weirder.
I don't know how much we know about them, but isn't that technically a sign of intelligence?
In 2006, photographer Paul Nicklin took a trip to Antarctica to hopefully find the steroid seal. Funny thing is, leopard seals are hard to find. They're hard for you to find. To them, you're easy. It wasn't long until Paul had a giant females are bigger by the way, leopard seal circling his zodiac, and it was at
She fell in love!
this moment he ignored every primitive instinct and ancestral alarm and got in the water and braced himself. The seal, with a head bigger than a grizzly bear's, made a beeline towards Paul, and right when Paul feared the worst and held up his camera as a feeble defense, the she leopard stopped and just sized him up. Science says if you're able to stay calm and hold your ground, a leopard seal will go from possibly aggressive to curious, and she even got close enough to study her reflection in his camera. It's like her internal monologue was saying, wait, you're not afraid. Why aren't you afraid? What are you? Then she got bored and swam away.
I assume that was the real footage from that?
But then came back with a live penguin, which she released in front of Paul. Obviously, Paul didn't take the offer, so the predator got another penguin, and then another one.
The poor penguin's getting stressed out. It's like, here, take my gift, human.
And for the next 4 days, the same species that had mauled a woman to death would now be waiting to greet Paul whenever he entered the water in an attempt to feed him. I want y'all to really understand what was happening here. This she leopard was going out and tiring penguins and bringing them to Paul. And when Paul didn't eat, she'd bring increasingly lower HP penguins. She'd bring beat up, barely alive penguins, half-eaten penguins. At one point, Paul had 5 past tense penguins floating around his head. Paul would even swear that the leopard seal seemed genuinely disappointed with his lack of effort. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can only think of one other time you had a wild predator straight up offering food to a person, and it was killer whales. And at least orcas have a history of hunting alongside people.
Wait, but why do killer whales do that? Shit, do I need to watch a video on killer whales next?
We're not talking about a trained animal or one habituated to humans. We're talking about a wild predator going out of its way to provide for a person. That's not normal. Seals are the mermaids of bears. Imagine a polar bear door dashing your dinner. That's not even the only thing leopard seals and orcas have in common. Leopard seals are much smarter than the penguin media wants you to believe. Leopard seal handling manuals go out of their way to say they're smart enough to be trained, but intelligent enough to be stubborn, and they're prone to pout and act difficult like children. At the same time, they also say that ignoring a difficult seal is a pretty solid way to get them to cooperate. Leopard seals aren't just highly intelligent, they're deeply emotional creatures too. Nora was a leopard seal that made news because it was the first time scientists watched a modern-day mosasaur mourn. Nora had a pup that tragically passed away, and in grieving, Nora would stay with her lost child for over 20 days. Nora didn't just watch over her child, she'd move the body across the ice, carried it in her jaws, and even got aggressive whenever people would get too close to them. It wouldn't even be the only time, as in 2021, 23, and 24, scientists documented the same mother doing the same thing with 3 different pups.
What? She's losing so many pups.
Which is a different kind of tragic. And again, the last time I can remember hearing something like this, it was when Orca J35, or Telekua, also grieved the death of her calf and couldn't let go. That's the problem with sea leopards being so understudied, because then you miss stuff like this. And that's not even mentioning arguably the most interesting thing about them. Leopard seals sing. Males will sing these beautifully haunting songs, and females in heat will respond with a song of their own. And if you haven't seen it, it's like an underwater opera or ballet from an animal that looks like a dinosaur. It's not just beautiful. Scientists actually studying these seal songs found that these songs are sequenced and structured a lot like human nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes. This guy. I really feel like leopard seals would have way better PR if they could actually survive in zoos. They're one of those animals that just don't work in captivity. They're like the great white sharks of mammals. Few leopard seals have ever been held in zoos, and the most famous case was in Sydney's Taronga. You know what I think about at night sometimes? Sometimes I think about Casey. Casey was a male leopard seal, believed to be the only male ever kept in captivity. He was found as a pup, abandoned on a beach in Guatemala, injured, emaciated, and with shark bites. Casey was brought to Taronga for treatment in 2007, where he joined female Brooke, who was rescued in 1999, and another female, Sabine, who got there a month before Casey. Now, I can already read the anti-zoo comments, so it's important to say that these seals could never be released back into the wild out of fear that if any of them were harboring any possible diseases, it'd wreck the already fragile wild population. So Taronga kept them to look after and even possibly use as ambassadors. Because again, leopard seals can always use the PR. And as Casey matured, there was a hope that he could help breed the first ever leopard seal in captivity. But since Brooke died of an illness not long after Casey showed up, it'd have to be him and Sabine. There was just one big problem. Male leopard seals sing for females, and as a seal found as a pup, Casey never learned his song. Taronga staff would play the recordings of adult leopard seal songs in hopes that Casey would find his. They even played saxophone for him. I'm not exactly sure why, but Casey wasn't above it. He genuinely seemed interested, so if he likes it, I love it. Tragically, Sabine would also—
Oh no, Sabine also died. I was gonna say that saxophone sounds sick, so of course he would appreciate it.
also be lost to an illness before Casey had the chance to court her. And as Casey finally did learn his song, he also died in 2014 after struggling with a prolonged sickness and mercifully being euthanized. That's how Casey's story ended.
So sad.
The last captive leopard seal ever. So at this point, I think you can see that leopard seals are so much more than a penguin plot device.
Oh yeah.
They've been lambasted and typecasted for as long as we've known about them, and demonized to hell. And you might ask, is that not what I was doing in the first half of this video? And honestly, I've been wanting to talk about that for a while. Skip to here if you don't want to hear the yap, but the biggest criticism I hear about myself is that I demonize animals, I spread misinformation to demonize them, and even that I've had a direct consequence on the conservation of those animals, and not a positive one. And honestly, whenever I would see that about myself, I get I'm not gonna lie, I'd get defensive and kind of hurt. Because I feel like I'm always saying you can't moral scale an animal, that you can't judge or you can't put a morality microscope on a wild animal. A zebra that has to weave crocs, cats, and a predatory laugh track don't give two stripes about being a good person. And then I feel like I try to make the separation between, you know, these are the facts that I find interesting, and this is the casual comedic characterization of those.
I honestly, from watching a lot of his videos, I always feel like, yeah, he makes fun of the animal sometimes, and he also shows like I want to say negative sides, as in like what we morally perceive as negative, but they're just wild animals, that's just how they act, right? But I will say he actually changed my mind on many animals in the past, which I thought were like way scarier than they actually are. So, I don't know, I feel like his videos are usually pretty good and they're entertaining. And for example, after seeing this video, I'm way more interested in leopard seals, and I think they're actually extremely fascinating animals. Before that, I was just like, oh, scary looking seal. But now I'm like, wow, they sing, they dance with each other in the water, they're so fucking interesting.
Those animals. But yeah, some corners of Twitter do not like me. especially with the dolphin thing. And I don't even have Twitter. I really just wish more people actually watched this video all the way through, or at least at the 940 mark, because I feel like I touch on a lot of the things folks criticize me for. Also, just to defend myself a little bit, I will take accountability, but the whole internet dolphin hate thread was a thing long before me. That didn't start with me. Some of y'all are giving me way too much power by saying I single-handedly did that. I've always said that the facts, as far as I'm concerned, are true, and if they're not and I get something wrong, I feel like over the years I've shown that I have no problem coming out and correcting it.
Oh, he actually made some correction videos. Interesting.
At the same time, if I call something like a Water Weinstein or a C Cosby, that doesn't mean I actually like you gotta know that I don't actually think dolphins should be persecuted to the full extent of the law.
I mean, they're animals. They're gonna act like wild animals.
But I can understand the other side. Because like, imagine you're a scientist or a marine biologist, and every time you log online, you see people saying dolphins are evil, dolphins deserve to die, all dolphins are and for every like 10 people that say that, maybe 3 or 4 link one of my videos.
But to be fair, people on Twitter will also just say the wildest shit. I think nowadays you really need to ignore Twitter for your own peace of mind.
Replay that interaction enough times, and of course, eventually you would just think, oh yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, fear-mongering mother. So that's why the last couple of years, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I've tried to be more careful with the way I frame these videos. I'm still gonna get my jokes off, that's just how I talk. I'm pretty sure I call this an Ice Cube missile crisis. But that's why I've been wanting to say this, specifically in this video. I've always been fascinated by leopard seals, especially the aspects that make them dangerous. In fact, whenever I'm emphasizing how dangerous an animal is, it's coming from a place of admiration. At the same time, they already get demonized crazy, so you do have to be careful with how you walk that line. Ultimately, I think there's a middle ground where you can be entertaining enough to be an entry point for people to be interested in zoology, while also being fair to the animal. And I think it's also fair to ask for a little bit of grace whenever I'm calling something like a threat to humanity. But I'll say it again, dolphins, chimps, hippos, otters, sea leopards, and all others aren't evil. They're just animals trying to make it to the next day without the human privilege of morality. But that's gonna do it for this video. Drink water, hug your mother, don't touch seals, and I'm gonna see y'all in the next one.
Hell yeah. Honestly, that was a good note towards the end. As I said earlier, I find leopard seals really, really fascinating now, so this was actually a great watch for me. I never really had them on my radar at all until I saw the More Pars video, and now finding out there's so much more than just scary looking seals with scary looking teeth. It's actually really, really cool, and I hope that there's more research done on them in the future. Kinda sucks that the research is getting cucked. Like, obviously the accident was really, really bad, but maybe if such an accident happens, it's beneficial to find out more about why and how these animals act and how to prevent stuff like that in the future. Even though, again, it only happened once, but still, would be good to learn more about them, you know? So, I really like this video. I hope you did too, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye! Thank you.